The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls were made of living crystal that grew slowly over centuries, and its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Every intelligent species in the known galaxy had sent representatives to this place. Every important decision for 10,000 star systems had been made within these walls. Today, the hall was filled with anger. High Arbiter Zethron sat on his throne of polished stone, looking down at the assembled representatives with all four of his eyes. He was old, even by the standards of his people, and he had seen many young species rise and fall. But he had never seen anything quite like the humans. "It must be stopped," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. 300 years ago, they were throwing rocks at each other on a small blue planet. Now they control 47 star systems. They breed faster than any species we have ever recorded. They build cities on worlds we declared uninhabitable. They refuse to follow our laws, representatives murmured in agreement. There were beings of light and beings of stone. There were creatures that breathed methane and creatures that lived in the hearts of stars. All of them shared one thing in common: fear of the humans. Ambassador Tyla of the Mindweaver Collective rose from her seat. She was a tall creature with too many legs and eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. "We offered them guidance," she said. "We offered to teach them the proper way to expand through the galaxy. They refused. They said they did not need teachers." "Worse than that," growled Representative Vornak of the Lithoid Consortium. He was a being made entirely of living rock, and when he spoke, small stones fell from his mouth. They had begun mining in the neutral territories. Those spaces have been sacred for 10,000 years. No species has touched them since the Great War. Zethron nodded slowly. He had hoped the humans would learn. He had hoped they would understand that the galaxy had rules, and that those rules existed for good reasons. But hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Then we have no choice," he said. "We must send them the final warning." The chamber fell silent. The final warning had only been used 3 times in the history of the Council. Each time, the species that received it had 2 choices: submit completely or face destruction. No species had ever chosen destruction. "Let it be recorded," Zethron continued. "The humans will surrender all colonies beyond their original 12 systems. They will submit to population control measures designed by the Council. They will accept permanent observer status with no voting rights for the next 5,000 years. If they refuse these terms, the combined fleets of the elder races will reduce their worlds to ash." The vote was taken. Every representative raised their hand or tentacle or tendril in agreement. The decision was unanimous. 2 days later, a council ship carrying the ultimatum entered the Sol system. On Earth, the message arrived at exactly 3 in the afternoon, Washington time. President Catherine Ellis was in her office, reviewing reports on the new colony ships being built in the orbital shipyards. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had led humanity through 2 small wars with minor species, and she had hoped her time in office would be remembered for peace. That hope died when she read the ultimatum. Admiral Daniel Cortez stood beside her, his face growing darker with every line he read. He was a big man with hands that had piloted warships and shoulders that had carried the weight of countless difficult decisions. Next to him stood Dr. Linda Morrison, the Secretary of Defense, a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "They want us to abandon 62 colonies," Catherine said quietly. 18 million people. They want us to move them all back to the original 12 systems. "It gets worse," Daniel said. "Population control measures. They want to decide how many children we can have. They want to put monitors in our hospitals to make sure we don't breed too fast." "What?" Linda shook her head. "And the observer status. 5,000 years with no voice in galactic affairs. Our great-grandchildren's greats-grandchildren would still be second-class citizens." Catherine set down the tablet and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, 37 ancient civilizations had just told humanity to kneel or die. "What are our military options?" she asked. Daniel pulled up a holographic display. Numbers and ship positions filled the air between them. The combined elder races have approximately 18,000 capital ships. Their weapons technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours, maybe more. We have 312 ships of the line, plus support vessels, so we can't win a direct fight. Oh, ma'am. Not even close. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the colonists on distant worlds building new lives under alien suns. She thought about the children being born every day. Children who had no idea that ancient beings had just decided their futures for them. She thought about everything humanity had built in 300 years of reaching for the stars. "Get me Admiral Samuel Harper at Luna Base," she finally said, "and wake up the Project Frostbite team." All of them. Daniel and Linda exchanged glances. Project Frostbite was the most classified program in human history. Only a handful of people knew it existed, and even fewer knew what it actually was. "Ma'am," Linda said carefully, "are you sure? If we activate Frostbite, there's no going back. The Council will never forgive us." Catherine turned from the window. There was something in her eyes that neither of them had seen before. It was cold and hard and absolutely certain. "The Council has given us two choices," she said. "Surrender or die. They think those are the only options because that's how the galaxy has always worked. The strong give orders, and the weak obey." She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "They're about to learn that humans don't play by the old rules. We never have. When someone puts a gun to our head and tells us to kneel, we don't kneel. We find a way to put a bigger gun to their head. If that doesn't work," Daniel asked. Catherine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then we make sure that if we go down, we don't go down alone. The Council wants us to be afraid of them. By the time this is over, they're going to be afraid of us. So afraid that they'll never threaten humanity again." She turned back to the window, watching the last light fade from the sky, and said no reply to the ultimatum. "Let them wonder. Let them wait. And get me Harper. We have work to do." In the darkness of space, the Council ship waited for a response that would not come. And on distant worlds, in secret facilities hidden from every scanner and spy satellite, teams of human scientists began preparing something that would change the galaxy forever. The elder races had 12,000 years of history. They had seen countless species rise and fall. They believed they knew everything there was to know about power and survival. They were wrong. 3 weeks passed, and the Galactic Council grew nervous. They had expected many things from humanity. They had expected panic. They had expected desperate messages begging for more time. They had expected the human government to collapse as different factions fought over whether to surrender or resist. They had expected at least some attempt at negotiation. Instead, they got nothing. Complete silence. The humans did not reply to the ultimatum. They did not send ambassadors. They did not even acknowledge that they had received the message. It was as if the entire species had simply decided to ignore the most powerful alliance in galactic history. High Arbiter Zethron found this silence more disturbing than any response could have been. On Earth's moon, in a military base buried deep beneath the gray surface, Admiral Samuel Harper stood at the center of a command room filled with holographic displays. He was 61 years old, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone, and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, tracking every ship in human space and beyond. "Status report," Harper said, his voice calm and steady. Lieutenant Commander Rosa Vega looked up from her console. She was young for her rank, barely 30, but she had proven herself in 2 border conflicts, and Harper trusted her completely. "All 62 colonies have finished civilian evacuation to deep shelters. Industrial facilities have been converted to war production. We're building ships as fast as we can, but... She hesitated. "But it won't be enough," Harper finished for her. "No. That's not why we're building them." The door to the command room opened. A thin man with nervous hands and thick glasses walked in. Dr. Nathan Cole was not a military man. He was a scientist, possibly the most brilliant scientist humanity had ever produced. He was also the creator of Project Frostbite. "Admiral," Nathan said, "the devices are ready. Harper nodded and gestured for Nathan to join him at the main display. "Show me." Nathan's fingers danced across the controls and the holographic display changed. Instead of ship positions, it now showed a diagram of a star. But this was not an ordinary diagram. It showed the internal structure of the star, layer by layer, from the outer corona down to the nuclear furnace at its core. "For the past 40 years, Nathan began, we've been studying stellar physics. How stars form, how they live, how they die. We learned things that no one else in the galaxy knows, because no one else was desperate enough to look." He zoomed in on the star's core. Every star is a balance between two forces: the gravity that wants to crush it together, and the nuclear fusion that pushes outward. When a star runs out of fuel, gravity wins. The star collapses, then explodes. We call this a supernova. "I know what a supernova is," Harper said. "Yes. But what you don't know is that we've figured out how to trigger one artificially." Nathan's voice was quiet now, almost a whisper. "The frostbite device, when deployed into a star's corona, creates a chain reaction in the stellar core. It disrupts the fusion process. The star doesn't just die, Admiral. It dies fast. What should take millions of years happens in a matter of hours." The officers in the room had stopped working. Everyone was staring at the display. "When the star explodes," Nathan continued, "everything in that system is destroyed. Not damaged. Not conquered. Completely erased. Planets, moons, space stations, ships. Everything within several light years is sterilized by the radiation burst. There are no survivors. There is nothing left." Harper was quiet for a long moment. He understood weapons. He had used weapons his entire career. But this was something different. This was not a weapon of war. This was a weapon of extinction. "How many devices do we have?" he finally asked. 12. "Each one requires materials that are extremely rare. We could build more, but it would take decades. The elder races have 18 core worlds. 18 home worlds where most of their populations live." "That's correct." Harper turned away from the display and walked to the observation window. Outside, the gray lunar surface stretched to the horizon. And beyond it, the Earth hung in the black sky like a blue and white marble. "The Council thinks we're afraid," he said slowly. "They think we're sitting here in the dark trying to figure out how to surrender with dignity. They have no idea what we've been building. They have no idea what we're capable of." He turned back to face the room. "The way I see it, we have two options. Option 1. We use these devices as a deterrent. We tell the Council that if they attack us, we'll take their most important worlds with us. Mutual destruction. They lose more than we do." "And Option 2? Rosa asked. Harper's expression didn't change. "Option 2 is we don't tell them anything. We wait for their fleet to arrive, and then we deploy all 12 devices simultaneously. We kill 12 of their homeworlds before they even know what's happening. Trillions of lives gone in an instant. The elder races would never recover. The power structure of the galaxy would collapse."
Ow.
The room was absolutely silent. "Option 2 would make us monsters," Nathan said quietly. "The worst mass murderers in the history of the universe." "Yes," Harper agreed, "but we would survive. Our children would survive. And in 1,000 years, when the history books are written, they would be written by humans." He let that sink in. "I'm not saying we should choose Option 2. I'm saying we need to be prepared to choose it if we have to. The Council has given us no middle ground. They want complete surrender or total war. So we need to be ready for total war." Nathan took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I didn't build these devices to destroy civilizations. I built them because I hoped we would never have to use them. No, and maybe we won't. But the only way to avoid using them is to make the Council believe that we will." Harper walked back to the main display. "Contact Captain Elizabeth Santos on the quiet conversation. Tell her to begin Phase 1. "Phase 1? Rosa asked. "We're going to deliver a message, not to the Council as a whole, but to each of the elder races individually. We're going to show them exactly what we can do and exactly what we're willing to do. and then we're going to give them a choice. What choice? Harper looked at the display, at the positions of the 12 Frostbite devices already being loaded onto stealth ships. The same choice they gave us. Live in peace or die together. The only difference is that this time, they're the ones who have something to lose. He straightened his uniform, said the messengers. Let's find out if the elder races are as wise as they claim to be. The orders went out. 12 ships, each carrying a weapon capable of killing a star, slipped away from human space and disappeared into the darkness. Between the stars, the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not a species that accepted ultimatums. High Arbiter Zethron was eating his evening meal when the servant came, running into his private chambers. The servant was young, barely past his first century, and his 4 hands were shaking so badly that he could barely speak. The servant gasped, "There is a human ship in orbit above our world." That is impossible. The stellar shield has protected Volantis's prime for 8,000 years. Nothing can pass through it without our permission. The ship did not pass through the shield, High Arbiter. It simply ... appeared. One moment our sensors showed empty space. The next moment the ship was there. Zethron rose from his seat and moved faster than he had moved in decades. By the time he reached the council chamber, the other representatives had already gathered. The great hall was filled with chaos as beings from a dozen species shouted at each other in a dozen languages. On the main display, floating against the stars, was a small human vessel. It was not a warship. It was barely larger than a shuttle. But it had done something that no ship had ever done. Before, it had appeared in the most protected space in the galaxy without triggering a single alarm. This is Captain Elizabeth. Santos of the Earth vessel. Quiet conversation. A voice announced over the communication system. The image changed to show a young human woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She did not look afraid. She did not look worried. She looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I carry a message from the government of Earth to the Galactic Council. You dare approach our homeworld. Zethron roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. You will be destroyed where you stand. You are welcome to try, Captain Santos replied pleasantly. But before you give that order, I suggest you check your stellar monitoring systems. Specifically, I suggest you look at the sensors watching your sun. A technician rushed to one of the control panels. His hands moved frantically across the controls. A moment later, his face went pale, and he looked up at Zethron with terror in his eyes. High Arbiter, the technician whispered. There is something at the edge of our star's corona, a human vessel. It is deploying some kind of device. Zethron felt his 4 hearts stop beating. The display changed again, splitting into multiple views. 12 separate images appeared, each showing a different star system. Each image showed a small human ship positioned at the edge of a star, but these were not random stars. Zethron recognized them all. The sun of Volantis Prime, the star that warmed the Mindweaver homeworld. The ancient furnace at the center of the lithoid breeding grounds. 12 of the 18 most important stars in Elder Race territory. 12 stars around which trillions of beings live their lives. What is this? Zethron managed to say. Captain Santos smiled, but there was nothing friendly in that smile. This is humanity's reply to your ultimatum, High Arbiter. Those 12 ships carry devices called Frostbite. Each device is capable of destabilizing a stellar core. In simple terms, they can make stars explode. If I give the signal, or if I fail to send a regular check-in signal, all 12 devices will activate simultaneously. The chamber erupted in screams. Representatives ran for the exits. The Mindweaver ambassador collapsed, her mind overwhelmed by the psychic shock of billions of her people crying out in sudden fear. The lithoid representative shattered into 1,000 pieces as his body simply fell apart. "You would murder trillions," Zethron shouted over the chaos. "You would destroy entire civilizations? Even the humans cannot be so monstrous." "We learned from the best," Santos replied. "You gave us two choices, submission or extinction. You told us to kneel or die. Did you think we would simply accept that? Did you think we would go quietly into the darkness?" She leaned forward in her captain's chair. "Let me explain your situation very clearly, High Arbiter. Right now, 12 of your most important worlds are hostages. If you attack Earth, those worlds die. If you attack any human colony, those worlds die. If you try to remove our ships by force, those worlds die. If anything happens to me or my ship, those worlds die." "This is madness," Zethron said. "Even if you destroy 12 of our worlds, we will still have enough ships to destroy every human in the galaxy." "Yes, you will. And then what?" Santos tilted her head. "Let us think about this together. You destroy Earth. You destroy all our colonies. Every human being is dead. But you have also lost 12 homeworlds. Trillions of your own people are dead. Who do you blame, us? We are already gone. You can only blame each other." She stood up from her chair and walked closer to the camera. "The Valkyrie will blame the Mindweavers for pushing the vote. The Mindweavers will blame the Lithoids for demanding action. Everyone will blame you, High Arbiter, for giving the ultimatum in the first place. Your precious council will tear itself apart. We have run the calculations. Within a century of Earth's destruction, the elder races will be fighting each other for control of what remains." Zethron wanted to argue. He wanted to say that the council was stronger than that the elder races woe. It'd never turn on each other. But even as he thought these things, he knew they were lies. The council had always been held together by fear and self-interest. Without a common enemy, old grudges would surface. Old wars would start again. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "We want to live," Santos said simply. "We want to raise our children and build our cities and explore the stars. We want what every species wants. But you told us we could not have these things. You told us we must submit or die." She returned to her chair and sat down. "So here's our counteroffer. You will recognize humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council with all voting rights and privileges. You will withdraw your ultimatum. You will acknowledge our right to the colonies we have already built. In exchange, we will deactivate the frostbite devices and return them to Earth. We will open diplomatic relations. We will even participate in your council meetings and follow your rules, as long as those rules apply equally to everyone. And if we refuse," Santos shrugged, "then we press the button. 12 stars, go nova. Trillions die on both sides. The galaxy burns for 1,000 years. Nobody wins." She paused to let that sink in. "You have 48 hours to decide. During that time, our ships will remain in position. Any attempt to interfere with them will be considered an attack, and the devices will activate immediately. I suggest you use this time wisely." The communication ended. The display went dark. In the council chamber, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of machinery and the quiet sobbing of the Mindweaver ambassador. As she slowly recovered from her collapse, Zethron looked around at the representatives. Of the elder races, these were beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed rebellions and conquered empires. They had believed themselves to be the masters of all they surveyed, and now a species that had been throwing rocks 300 years ago had brought them to their knees. "What do we do?" someone asked. Zethron had no answer. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council had no answer. The 48 hours passed without incident. Then another 48 hours. Then a week. Then a month. The council did not attack. They could not attack. Every time someone suggested military action, someone else pointed out that 12 homeworlds would be destroyed the moment the first shot was fired. The elder races had built their civilization on the principle that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. Now they faced an enemy that had made strength meaningless. On Earth, the revelation of Project Frostbite had leaked to the public. Secrets always found a way out, especially secrets that involved the survival of the entire species. Within days, everyone knew what humanity had done. Everyone knew what humanity was willing to do. The reaction was not what President Catherine Ellis had expected in Congress. Senator Marcus Bell stood before his colleagues with fury in his eyes. "We have become the monsters," he shouted. "We have threatened to murder trillions of innocent beings, children, families, entire civilizations that had nothing to do with the Council's ultimatum. And for what? To save ourselves?" Admiral Daniel Cortez defended the decision. "Every one of those children, every one of those families is alive right now because of Project Frostbite. If we had not acted, the elder races would have destroyed us. They made that very clear. So we should become just like them. We should answer threats with bigger threats. We should do whatever is necessary to survive." The debate spread beyond Congress. Protests erupted in cities across Earth and on every colony world. Some people demanded that the Frostbite devices be destroyed immediately. Others insisted they were humanity's only protection against extinction. Families argued at dinner tables. Friends stopped speaking to each other. Religious leaders preached sermons on both sides of the issue. Catherine watched it all from her office in the White House, feeling older than she had ever felt in her life. Meanwhile, in a space station at the edge of Council territory, a different kind of conversation was taking place. Ambassador Gregory Stone had been a diplomat for 30 years. He had negotiated trade agreements with species that communicated through colors and peace treaties with beings that experienced time backwards. But nothing in his career had prepared him for sitting across a table from High Arbiter Zethron. The room was neutral ground, designed to be uncomfortable for everyone. The lighting was wrong for human eyes and wrong for Valkyrie eyes. The chairs were wrong for human bodies and wrong for Valkyrie bodies. 2 armed guards stood behind each diplomat, watching the other side with suspicion. "Must understand," Zethron said. His translator, turning his alien words into English. "The Council has maintained peace for 12,000 years. We guide younger species. We prevent wars before they start. We keep order in a galaxy that would otherwise destroy itself." "You mean you control younger species?" Gregory replied calmly. "You decide which ones are allowed to grow and which ones are kept small. You call it guidance, but it looks a lot like tyranny from where we're sitting." "Tyranny?" Zethron's 4 eyes narrowed. "We have prevented more wars than you can imagine. We have saved more lives than your species has ever produced. Is that tyranny? You also decided, without asking us, that humanity had to be contained. You decided our children should be limited. You decided our colonies should be abandoned. You made these decisions in a room where we had no voice and no vote. Yes, High Arbiter, that is exactly what tyranny looks like." Zethron was silent for a moment. Gregory could not read alien expressions, but he thought he saw something like frustration in the way the High Arbiter held his 4 arms. "And your solution is better?" Zethron finally asked. "You hold the galaxy hostage with weapons of mass destruction. You threaten to kill trillions if we do not give you what you want. How is this different from what we did?" "It's not different," Gregory admitted. "That's the point." He leaned forward across the table. 300 years ago, my species almost destroyed itself. We had weapons that could end all life on our planet. 2 great powers, each convinced the other was the enemy, each willing to die rather than surrender. For decades, we lived with the knowledge that one mistake could end everything. And you survived this? We did. Not because one side won. Not because one side surrendered. We survived because both sides realized that neither could afford to lose. We built systems that made war unthinkable. We talked to each other, even when we hated each other. We found ways to cooperate because the alternative was too terrible to consider. Gregory sat back in his chair. That is what we are offering the Council, High Arbiter. Not submission. Not dominance. Balance. You know what we can do to you? We know what you can do to us. That knowledge is terrible, but it can also be the foundation of something better. You speak of partnership, Zethran said slowly. But how can there be partnership when there is no trust? Trust is built over time. We start with rules that benefit both sides. We verify that those rules are being followed. Slowly, carefully, we learn to work together. It will not be easy. It will not be fast. But it is possible, and the frostbite devices, they remain. They will always remain. A reminder to both sides of what happens if we fail. But they become a monument instead of a weapon. A symbol of the war that never was. Zethran was quiet for a long time. Outside the station's windows, the stars turned slowly in their ancient dance. Somewhere out there, 12 human ships still waited at the edges of 12 stars, their deadly cargo ready to deploy. Your species is dangerous, Zethran finally said. Yes, you're unpredictable and violent, and you refuse to follow rules you did not help create. Also yes, and yet you ask us to trust you. Gregory shook his head. No, High Arbiter. I ask you to fear us. Fear is honest. Fear is reliable. You know what we are capable of, and we know what you are capable of. That mutual fear can keep us both safe until something better grows in its place. He stood up from his chair. Take our proposal to the Council. We are willing to be partners. We are willing to follow reasonable rules and participate in galactic affairs. But we will not be servants. We will not be controlled. We will not accept any arrangement that treats us as less than equal. Zethran remained seated, looking up at the human with all four of his eyes. If I take this proposal to the Council, there will be those who see it as weakness. There will be those who demand we attack, regardless of the consequences. Then convince them otherwise. Make them understand that this is the best possible outcome for everyone. 12,000 years of history should have taught you something about the value of compromise. Gregory walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. You have 1 week to respond. After that, we will assume negotiations have failed, and we will prepare for war. I hope, for everyone's sake, that it does not come to that. He left the room, his guards following close behind. Zethran sat alone in the empty chamber, thinking about everything the human had said. He thought about 12,000 years of Council history. He thought about all the species that had risen and fallen under Council guidance. He thought about what the galaxy would look like if the humans truly were as dangerous as they seemed, and for the first time in his very long life, High Arbiter Zethran was afraid. 1 year after the ultimatum, the treaty was signed. It was not a perfect document. No treaty ever was. The negotiations had been difficult, both sides giving up things they did not want to give and accepting things they did not want to accept. There had been moments when everything nearly fell apart, when old fears and old hatreds threatened to destroy what had been built. But in the end, the desire to survive proved stronger than the desire to win. The elder races kept their council and their ancient traditions. They kept their influence over the younger species they had guided for thousands of years. But they agreed to recognize humanity as a full member, with voting rights equal to any other species. They agreed to withdraw their demands for population control and colony abandonment. They agreed to treat humans as partners, not subjects. In return, humanity agreed to follow Council rules for expansion and exploration. They agreed to participate in the diplomatic processes they had previously ignored. And they agreed to place the frostbite devices in a special facility, watched over by representatives from both sides, where they could never be used without the knowledge of everyone involved. The weapons remained. They would always remain. But they became something different. Instead of a threat, they became a reminder of how close both sides had come to destroying everything. President Catherine Ellis stood before the United Nations General Assembly for her final address. She would be leaving office soon, her term completed, her work finished. In the audience sat representatives from every human nation, and for the first time, observers from a dozen alien species. Today, We remember what happened 1 year ago, she said. We remember the ultimatum that threatened our existence. We remember the choice we made in response. And we remember how close we came to ending not just ourselves, but civilizations that had existed for thousands of years before us. She paused and looked out at the assembled faces. Some have called us monsters for what we were willing to do. Perhaps they are right. We showed the galaxy that humanity, when pushed to the edge, will push back harder than anyone expected. We showed them that we would rather destroy everything than accept slavery. Catherine's voice softened. But that is not who we have to be. The frostbite devices will stay in their storage facility. They will never be forgotten. But they do not have to define us. We have the chance now to show the galaxy what humanity can be when we are not fighting for survival. She straightened her shoulders. We can be scientists, exploring the mysteries of the universe. We can be artists, creating beauty that speaks across the boundaries of species and language. We can be explorers, finding new worlds and new wonders. We can be partners, working alongside beings who were our enemies just months ago. In the audience, Admiral Samuel Harper sat beside Dr. Nathan Cole. Neither of them spoke. But both understood the weight of this moment. They had built a weapon capable of ending civilizations. They had been willing to use it. Now they had to find a way to live with that knowledge. To the Galactic Council, Catherine continued, I say this. We are not your children. We will never be your children. We do not need your guidance or your control, but we can be your neighbors. We can be your colleagues. And if you give us enough time, we might even become your friends. She smiled. And for a moment she looked not like a president, but like someone's grandmother. Tired from a long journey, but hopeful about what lay ahead. To humanity, I say this. We survived. Against all the odds, against an enemy that should have crushed us, we survived. Now comes the hard part. Now we must deserve to survive. We must prove that we are worthy of the place we have claimed among the stars. She stepped back from the podium. The universe is waiting. Let us go find out what we can become. The applause started slowly, then built until it filled the entire chamber. Humans and aliens together, clapping or clicking or vibrating in whatever way their species showed approval. 6 months later, the starship Unity launched from Earth orbit. She was the first ship of her kind, built by humans, but designed to carry crews from multiple species. Her hull was marked with the flags of every human nation, and beside them were the symbols of 7 alien civilizations that had agreed to join the mission. Captain Maria Vargas sat in the command chair, watching the stars through the main viewport. She was young for a captain, but she had been chosen for this mission because she represented the future. She had grown up after first contact. She had friends who were not human. She saw the galaxy not as a threat, but as an opportunity. All systems are ready, reported her first officer, Commander Dennis Hayes. The Valkyrie delegation is aboard and settled. The Mindweaver representatives have completed their meditation rituals. Everyone is ready for departure. Maria nodded. Somewhere deep in the ship's secure hold, a single frostbite device sat in a shielded container. It was there as a precaution, a final protection if something went terribly wrong. But Maria hoped they would never need it. She hoped that the age of threats and counter-threats was ending, and something better was beginning. Open a channel to the Valkyrie vessel, she ordered. Let them know we are ready to depart. A moment later, a familiar face appeared on the screen. Not High Arbiter Zethron, who had retired after the treaty, but a younger Valkyrie named Kethron, who had been appointed to lead the joint exploration mission. Captain Vargas, Kethron said, his translator converting his words smoothly into English. Are your people prepared for what lies ahead? Maria smiled. We are prepared to find out, Ambassador. That is the human way. We do not wait until we are ready. We begin, and we become ready along the way. Catherine made a sound that Maria's translator interpreted as laughter. A dangerous approach, yes, but also an exciting one. She turned to face her crew, a mix of humans and aliens working together at their stations. A year ago, this would have been impossible. The elder races and humanity had been enemies, separated by fear and misunderstanding. Now they were something else. Not friends, not yet, but partners in an experiment that neither side fully understood. Set course for the Perseus arm, Maria ordered. Maximum exploration speed. And send a message back to Earth. Tell them we are on our way. The Unity's engines hummed to life. The stars began to move as the ship accelerated toward the unknown. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the vast darkness. But in that point of light, something had changed. Humanity was no longer alone. They were no longer afraid. They had looked into the abyss and threatened to drag everyone in with them, and somehow, impossibly, they had emerged with something better than victory. They had emerged with hope. The stars were waiting. And for the first time in human history, they were not waiting to be conquered or feared. They were waiting to be explored together by beings who had learned the hard way that survival meant nothing without something worth surviving for. Maria. Vargas looked out at the endless darkness ahead and smiled. The future was uncertain. The future was dangerous. But the future was also full of possibilities that no one could have imagined just a year ago. And that, she thought, was worth any risk. The Unity flew on, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations that had chosen to build something new. Instead of destroying everything old, it was not a perfect ending. There would be more conflicts ahead, more misunderstandings, more moments when everything threatened to fall apart. But it was a beginning, and sometimes a beginning was enough.